So let's pick up on the ones that are all in pieces. Yeah. I'm trying to get us to do one of George's for the first batch, you know.
Yeah. What do you know now, Mr. Shore? I don't know. I don't know.
Something became one of the Beatles' most popular and most covered tracks, but had the group not come together for one final time to record Abbey Road, the song could have ended up very differently as a George Harrison solo track. Would it have been as good? Just how much did the Beatles and others contribute to this song? The first contributor was actually an American singer-songwriter. The opening lyric came from James Taylor's Something in the Way She Moves. Recently signed to Apple, Taylor was recording his first album at Trident Studios in October 1968, for which George had contributed a backing vocal. At the same time, George was in the studio working on Savoy Truffle with Paul and Ringo.
But you have to have them all pulled out after the Savoy Truffle.
Around the time that the White Album was being wrapped up, George first worked on Something, initially on piano in an empty Studio One at Abbey Road, whilst Paul was working on something completely different in Studio 2. Most of the tune was in place, except for the middle eight.
The Something is a song of mine I wrote towards the end of the Beatles album, the White Album. I wrote it as we were still recording that album, but I never finished it off. I could never think of words for it. And also because there was a James Taylor song called Something in the Way She Moves, which is the first line of that. And so then I thought of trying to change the words, but they were the words that came when I first wrote it. So in the end I just left it as that and just called it Something.
Whilst the melody came quickly to George, he struggled for several months to find the right words.
I usually get the first few lines of lyrics and melody both at once, and then I finish the melody usually first and then have to write the words.
Many commentators have remarked that George was at a disadvantage compared to Lennon-McCartney, as he did not have a fellow partner to write with, something which George acknowledged himself.
I wasn't Lennon or I wasn't McCartney, and I was me. And the only reason I started to write songs was because I thought, well, if they can write them, I can write them.
However, that didn't stop George from seeking advice from John or Paul, nor did it hinder them from offering their own suggestions. No more is this evident than on Something. Here we can see in Peter Jackson's Get Back when John gives him some invaluable advice on how to deal with a lyric block.
What could it be, Paul? Something in the way she moves. What attracted me at all?
Just say whatever comes in your head each time. Attracts me like a cauliflower until you get the word.
Yeah, but I've been through this one for about 6 months. Attracts me like a pomegranate. We could have that. Attracts me like a pomegranate. Something in the way she moves attracts me like a moth to candles. Pomegranate, like a cauliflower. Something in the way she moves.
John also contributed the line, "Don't want to leave her now, you know I believe and how." George acknowledged John's helpful advice in an interview around the time of the release of Abbey Road.
But John gave me a handy tip once, which is once you start to write a song, try and finish it straight away while you're in the mood. And I've learned from experience, because you go back to it and then you're in a whole different state of mind and it's more difficult. Sometimes it's easier, but on the whole it's more difficult to come back to something. So I do now try and finish them straight away.
There is also an entire, in my opinion, inferior verse completely omitted. Whether by George or on the suggestion of others is unclear. George's handwritten lyrics read, "You know I love that woman of mine, and I need her all of the time. And you know what I'm telling to you, that woman, don't make me blue." By the end of February and on his 26th birthday, George recorded demos for 3 songs at Abbey Road, the last of which was Something, recorded in just one solo take, with George on electric guitar accompanying his lead vocal.
I don't want to leave now. You know I believe in how.
George then added an additional piano track to the demo. Something would most likely still have been a big success as a solo George Harrison recording, but it was elevated to new heights thanks to contributions from all 4 of the Beatles. Let's look at the isolated tracks, starting off first with Paul's melodic bass, instructed by George to be played more simply. Ringo provided a distinctive yet typically inventive drum pattern. John's songwriting tip was invaluable, but his contribution didn't end there. He's on the final recording, buried deep in the mix on piano. One of the final contributions came from Billy Preston, his Hammond organ being a late overdub. And of course, George himself lays down one of his best guitar solos and a very strong lead vocal.
Something in the way she moves attracts me like no other lover. Something in the way she woos me. I don't want to leave her now. You know I believe in how.
George Harrison worked very closely with George Martin on the masterful string arrangement and even shared the same conductor's podium with him. One cannot think that things might have worked out very differently had Phil Spector been producing the song as a solo track for George Harrison's All Things Must Pass album. This sublime melody is utterly unique and George's alone, but with a little help from his friends, the song became an all-time classic. When asked about their favourite track from the recently released Abbey Road album, both John and Paul cited Something.
I like Something, George writes. I think it's, for me, I think it's the best he's written.
I think we've probably put Something out as a single out there. I think that's about the best track on the album, actually, George's track.
And finally, George was rewarded for the first time with an A-side on a Beatles single.
They blessed me with a couple of B-sides in the past, but this is the first time I've had an A-side. Big deal, eh?